Well, I've taken things to the next level with DVD base. First of all, we copied the controls and the code from genre input that we created previously, and also copied it to location, modifying the variable names and the code names within the variable names within the code and so on. Since they're both essentially identical, one deals with location and one deals with genre, but they're handled in identical ways. So here's the copied genre controls, and if we click on the location button, here's the copied location controls. And if I double click on the location button, here's the location code event handler for the button. As you can see, it's txt location instead of txt genre, and txt wherever it is, saved locations instead of txt or lbx saved genres and so on, but essentially identical code. And then in addition to this, we added a new page, which is the DVD input. And as you can see, it has a scene checkbox, a text box for typing in the title, and then two combo boxes, one for location and one for genre. And this basically means at the start of day we need to fill in 4 list box type objects. We need to fill in the genre list box and the location list box on those pages, and we also need to fill in the location combo box and the genre combo box on the DVD input page. And in order to implement that, the best way is to encapsulate the code and make it a hierarchical structure. In other words, instead of having a long amount of code in the form load, which would really start to look like spaghetti code and be hard to maintain, we have 4 functions: the pop genre list, pop location list, pop cbx di genre, and pop cbx di location for those 4 list box type objects. So if we look at this code, right click on it and go to definition, you see in the genre list it's essentially the identical code, but it's got everything encapsulated, and also we have a clear at the top in case we call this from other places, because another reason for encapsulating code like this is it may well be called from multiple places. In fact, the pop cbx di genre for DVD input page genre and the pop cbx di location are in fact called from multiple places. If you look at the event handler, for instance, for button add genre, one of the last things it does at the end of the page after it adds the genre to the table is it calls pop cbx di genre to repopulate that list box, which is one of the reasons we need a clear at the top of all those functions, because if we don't do that, we're going to get duplicate items for genres that were already there before. So we've covered the copying the controls and creating the DVD input page on the level of the filling in the list boxes and the combo boxes. And now we have to look at a technique for building an SQL string that involves taking the values that were input by the user and incorporating them into the SQL string, in this case an insert string. And if I run this, something will become clear. I compile and run this. If we look at the DVD input and look at the location, one thing you notice about the location is it doesn't have the numbers of the primary keys. We have quite a few types now. I've actually input 53 records, and you really debug and add the code by actually using it. And in fact, I added a ton of code as well as a ton of genres by just inputting those 53 records. But the fact is, if we had a number in here, we could use some kind of string parser to get the value of the index, which is what we really need for the DVD record, since it uses the code, which is the primary key of that record, in order to create the relation that hooks those records together. So how do we get the actual code value for, say, sci-fi 01 if we don't have it in the string? And the answer to that is a subquery. If we go into the save DVD, oh yeah, I'm running it instead of developing it. If we go into the save DVD and look at this concatenation of the string, basically we're inputting the title text from the title text box, and we're checking that it's not empty, and then we're checking the selected item on each of the combo boxes and making sure they're not empty. If they are empty, we pop up a message box that says you have to fill those in. And then we're creating an SQL string that says insert into DVD's title, location ID, genre ID, and scene. And then we have the values, and the first value we need a single quote to delimit it since it's a string. So that single quote is in the concatenated string. And then we have the title, and then we have the closing single quote. And then for the values of the code values of location and genre, we use what's known as a subquery. And the format of the subquery basically is a parentheses and then a select statement that returns a single value that's appropriate to where you're inserting it, appropriate to the slot you're inserting it in. So this is inside a values clause of an insert. So what we want is the location ID. So we do select location ID from location where name equals, and then we use the value we got from the combo box, once again delimited with single quotes, and then we end the subquery by closing the parentheses. So this will return the location ID for this location name by looking it up in the table. And we do exactly the same thing with the genre. We do a select genre ID from genre where name equals the name we had in the combo box. And then finally we deal with the boolean that we have as scene, and we say if the checkbox scene is checked. One problem I have is CBX is the same for checkbox and combo box. I got to think of a different prefix. But I say if the combo box scene is checked, do a final concatenation of the SQL string and make it a true, and then close the parentheses of the values and have a semicolon ending the command. And if it's not checked, it must be false, so we concatenate a false and do close the parentheses and have a semicolon closing the string. And then we pass this SQL string that we've generated based on user input values plus the connection that we made valid in the form load, and create a command, SQL command object or MySql command object, and then do an execute non-query to do the insert. And then we clear the title field and focus on the title field so we can put in a new value. And one thing that's good about this is we don't reset the combo boxes or the checkbox of scene and so on. And the reason that's good is that these are very repetitive, especially location. Like all 53 of the records I input were all from sci-fi 01. So I want that to stay in the combo box every time I press the save DVD button. They're what's known as sticky fields. fields that don't change till you change them. They remember what value they were the last time. So I think that pretty much covers the subqueries and the boolean field, which are the two things I mainly wanted to talk about when I talk about the DVD input tab page. And the format of both is here. It's case insensitive for true and false in the boolean, so you can put lowercase false or uppercase false, it won't care. And I covered pretty much the select subquery and so on. And of course the value that the subquery returns must match the type that's in that slot, and it's not necessarily a values field in an insert. It could be a field in a where, like you often use subqueries as a clause in a where to get a returned value. It's sort of a poor man's way of doing a quick relation. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a lot, and I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe.